The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
American workers more productive than ever. The former head of the Fed now speaking out. Meanwhile, Labor Lab's list of union busters is out. And today on the show, the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield and AFSCME in Maryland. Welcome to the Friday, July 31st edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Well, how about this? We have a total of 5 guests joining us on the podcast today. 2 of them come from one of our great sponsors, the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Marilee Logue, who's been on the show many, many times. She serves as Executive Director of the National Labor Office, and today she will be joined by Duncan Lawson. Now, Duncan tracks national market trends in Medicare and Medicaid markets, and what he does, he analyzes those trends and then translates them into recommendations for the Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies who use that information to understand what's working and what could be improved for union brothers and sisters. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So this is going to be a good conversation. And I'll tell you, frankly, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to Medicare, Medicare Advantage programs. And you know what? Open enrollment is right around the corner. That'll be happening in October, and it usually wraps up at the beginning of December. And we'll be talking more about that later on. So, Marilee Logue and Duncan Lawson from the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Then we are going to go to the state of Maryland and join 3 individuals on behalf of AFSCME in Maryland. The website you want to go to is AFSCMEMD.org. Well, here's the story. In early June, the University of Maryland College Park announced layoffs for 73 AFSCME represented positions. We're talking staff, students, faculty. It includes a range of job titles across various departments. And a lot of these folks were, providing mental health services for students, planning commencement, other events, providing IT services. And all of a sudden, they just pulled the rug out from under them. In fact, one of them, Sarah Grun, is one of the layoffs. She'll be on the show today along with Sarah Eppley, who's a union steward, and the president of the local there. The local is 1072. Todd Holden will be talking about this whole situation there, which is really ugly. And you know why this is so ugly? Because there's some people making a lot of money that are still working. Okay? They got money for others, but not for people on the ground level, the one that are doing the daily work over there at the University of Maryland College Park. And now a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. This should come as no surprise. American workers are more productive than ever. Labor productivity has been growing at its fastest pace in at least 2 decades, driven by a combination of tight labor markets, the post-pandemic digitization of work, remote hiring from broader talent pools, and industry consolidation. The former Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, noted in March that he had never expected to see so many consecutive years of strong productivity growth, adding that the economy had not yet begun to feel the effects of generative AI, but the gains have a darker side. Tech employment has shrunk for 18 consecutive months. And the finance sector, well, that lost more than 100,000 jobs since May of 2025. Now, a Federal Reserve survey found that many firms had delayed or foregone hiring because AI-driven efficiencies enabled them to do more with fewer workers. I do have to share with you a story that I picked up recently from the Ford Motor Company. Because of AI, Ford trimmed their staff like a lot of companies did. And they recently rehired 350 people, many of them engineers. You know why? Because things weren't getting done. They lost a lot of institutional knowledge at Ford. And you know what? I am willing to bet other companies did the same thing and are probably hiring some of those folks back. Interesting story there. Let's talk about the UAW here. About 1,000 UAW Local 400 members who manufacture seats for vehicles like the Ford F-150s and the Stellantis Dodge Ram trucks. This would be at Bridgewater Interiors. They have voted by 80% to ratify a new contract that secures a top rate of $35 per hour by 2030. Among other major gains at the plant, this is in Warren, Michigan. Sean Fain, president, UAW, this is what he said. UAW Local 400 members at Bridgewater Interiors are just another example of workers in that sector who are ready to stand up and win their fair share. They don't treat the CEOs like second-class citizens, so why do they treat workers that way? Whether you build axles or seats, the days of allowing workers to be treated like second-class citizens is ending. Prior to the agreement, most workers at Bridgewater earn less than $21 an hour, with hundreds of others having been stuck under $26 per hour. So congratulations to those at Local 400, UAW Local 400 in Warren, Michigan. Well, it's time once again to talk about the Union Busters. I got to do a shout out to Bob Funk and his team at the Labor Lab. Here's one to start off with. Gloucester Forest Products in Mississippi hired Michael Williams. That election was won, so it didn't work out. There were many amended LM-20s submitted in the past week. Now, these are the forms that a company has to submit if they're going to hire a law firm or, let's be honest, a union buster. And there are many out there, big industry. Legacy Consulting for Ventura Coastal and U.S. Auto Force. Alejandro Rique Gamboa for Empire Auto Parks and U.S. Auto Force. Tyndall Consulting. This is for an Amazon warehouse. DAX5 number 1 and DAX5 number 2. Alfred Roger Lacey was hired for Amazon number 1 and Amazon number 2. Other notable amendments, LM-20 amendments, include M. Rosado Consultants. Their compensation rate, $200 an hour for Newcastle building products. A lot going on in the union busting industry. We recently reported this is an industry generating a lot of money for people to the tune of $1.7 billion a year, each and every year. All right, quick break. National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield right after this on America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. Are you an experienced mechanical insulator looking to take your career to the next level? Insulators Local 50 in Central Ohio has steady work for a number of years. Insulators Local 50 offers a total wage and benefits package that can't be beat. It's not just the competitive wages. Local 50 also provides medical, vision, and dental insurance with no paycheck deductions for you and your family. Don't miss out on the chance to secure your future. Join us at Insulators Local 50. Earn great pay and the best benefits. Visit insulators50.com/AWF50 to fill out the online form, and a Local 50 representative will call to begin the process. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, to loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Farrens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Time now for our monthly segment from the good folks at the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. We now welcome back Marilee Logue. Marilee is the Executive Director of the National Labor Office of Blue Cross Blue Shield. Marilee, always great having you back on the show.
Hi, Flash. It's great to be back.
So, what do we have on tap today?
In 2 words, Medicare Advantage, or MA, as we like to call it. And more specifically, the shifting sands of Medicare and Medicare Advantage programs that have added some confusion about healthcare coverage access for quite a few union members. As you know, many funds cover union members through retirement, but others do not. Therefore, each member needs to really determine if they will be covered under their union group plan or access coverage through Medicare.gov or another source to find an individual Medicare plan. I brought my colleague, Duncan Lawson, who has a finger on the pulse of Medicare access and changes.
So welcome back, Duncan. Would you once again tell our listeners about your role at Blue Cross Blue Shield Association?
Hey, thanks, Flash. Thanks, Marilee. It's great to be back with you again. At the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, I track national market trends in the Medicare as well as Medicaid markets. I analyze those trends and then translate them into recommendations for our local Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies. They then use that information to understand what's working, what could be improved upon in the future, all thinking about their members. Prior to this, I worked for the parent company over at BCBS of Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. I have a bachelor's degree in economics from Illinois Wesleyan University and an MBA in healthcare management from Loyola University here in Chicago.
You know, for those who are not yet in the Medicare or Medicare Advantage orbits, can you give us a quick recap here?
Sure. Medicare is the federal health insurance program for anyone age 65 or older, or who might be eligible for Medicare for another reason, like having a qualifying chronic condition. Medicare has a few parts. The first is Part A, which is the hospital insurance, and that's free. It has a Part B, which covers doctor and other healthcare provider services, and this part may require an extra premium based on your income. There's also Part D, which is prescription drug coverage, and that may also come with a premium depending on the benefit package that you select. And Medicare Advantage, which is what we're talking about today, is a bundle of Parts A and B together, which often includes Part D. Plus, they frequently cover added benefits like vision, dental, hearing, or wellness programs.
Okay, so Medicare Advantage. What's all changed, Duncan, since we last talked about it?
Well, medical costs have gone up everywhere, and that's certainly not news to anybody. But an unfortunate byproduct of all of these escalating costs is that a handful of popular Medicare and Medicare Advantage plans have had to pull back on their offerings, and sometimes even outright eliminating their plans. 2026 was the second consecutive year that we've seen over 2 million Medicare Advantage consumers have their plans terminated, and even more found that their benefits were degraded. Unfortunately, this is a trend that may continue into 2027.
I guess we shouldn't be too surprised at that trajectory with healthcare costs increasing so much as of late.
Yes, and it's just becoming a challenging financial environment for everyone, Flash. The consumer, the insurance companies, the doctors, and even Medicare system itself. The unions have fought so hard over the decades negotiating the strongest health benefits for their active members and for many, their retirees. Not surprisingly, union leaders are concerned over these challenges and are looking at ways to preserve affordable, high quality coverage. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies, unions, and trust funds are also working together to improve access to care, promote preventive care services, and help members navigate the healthcare system much more effectively, all with the goal of improving outcomes in health and finance while helping manage costs. That's why we're seeing a renewed focus on affordability across the labor community, including within Medicare Advantage programs.
Now, I know more than a few union leaders who are doing just that. So, is this affecting all Medicare Advantage programs?
Oh no, Flash, certainly not. But it does seem to be affecting a fair amount of preferred provider organization plans. Sometimes we call those PPOs, as well as plans that are offered by smaller insurance carriers. And it's also more pronounced in less populated rural areas that have a smaller Medicare Advantage presence. Overall, though, the previous 2 years have shown that Medicare Advantage payment rate increases have simply not kept up with the rising medical costs, which has been a big contributor to us seeing fewer plans on the market.
Well, frankly, I have seen no evidence of healthcare costs going down anytime soon. So, does that mean that good Medicare Advantage plans will be harder to find? Duncan, what do you think?
Honestly, for some, yes, but there's still a pretty good selection of robust MA programs out there. It might take a little bit more digging and research and scrutiny than usual to find them, perhaps. Your union health benefit representatives should have a handle on the best MA plans out there for you, though.
And also, Duncan, despite the reduction in programs and some benefits, Medicare Advantage is still hugely popular because their affordable, comprehensive benefits are under one plan and easy to use. Over 35 million people are enrolled in Medicare Advantage plans. And even in the current climate, there is still at least one zero premium Medicare Advantage plan with prescription drug coverage available to virtually every Medicare beneficiary.
Well, that's certainly good to know. Now, tell me, have either one of you had a recent experience in enrolling in a Medicare Advantage program?
I have, actually, or rather, my parents have. Both my mom and dad turned 65 and aged into Medicare eligibility recently. They ended up making different enrollment decisions that they're both happy with. My mom spends more time traveling and wanted the flexibility to see any doctor that she wants while she's away from home, so she enrolled in a Medicare supplement plan with a standalone drug plan. My dad, on the other hand, found a zero premium Medicare Advantage plan that had his doctor in an HMO network, included supplemental benefits like OTC or over-the-counter card, as well as offered Part D coverage. They both made the enrollment decision that made the most sense for them. And even with fewer Medicare Advantage plans in the market than there were a few years back, the selection of plans available to them was still really extensive.
Really nice to hear your folks matched up so well, Duncan, especially with a couple of different Medicare programs. But just curious here, was the actual enrolling process relatively event-free?
Yes, they worked with a local broker and everything went smoothly and quickly. I was very happy for them, and so were my mom and dad.
I bet they were. So how can union members find out more about Medicare and Medicare Advantage program?
We have some great general information out there on our Medicare page. That's on the Blue Cross Blue Shield website. You can go to bcbs.com/Medicare Advantage to start learning there. Then there's also the Medicare.gov website from the government if anyone is interested in learning more about their options that way.
And even in the current environment, there are multiple options for health coverage as you're approaching 65. But we would encourage listeners to consider all their Medicare options, including Medicare Advantage plans, to pick the one that suits your needs. You'll also have an opportunity each year to review that plan and make a change if your needs or circumstances are different.
Definitely check to see if your union offers Medicare coverage as you get closer to 65. And if you have an extenuating circumstance, there are always special enrollment periods for those type of situations. For example, if you move to a new county or become eligible for dual Medicare-Medicaid plans, or if you want to enroll in a highly rated 5-star plan.
Perfect. Thanks, Duncan. And to you, Marilee, for joining us on yet another timely topic of huge interest to organized labor.
A great conversation for sure, Flash. And I'll close by saying at Blue Cross and Blue Shield Companies, we are dedicated to supporting American workers so they have the healthcare coverage they need when they need it. As for me and my team, we sponsor labor events, conferences, and conventions throughout the year. You can find our full calendar at bcbs.com/national-labor-office. You can also follow us at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and on X.
Excellent. Many thanks to our guests from Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, Marilee Logue and Duncan Lawson, for sharing their Medicare Advantage insights and reporting. So please join us again soon. All right, quick break. When we come back, we're going to check in with 3 individuals fighting layoffs at the University of Maryland, all represented by the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Well, at the beginning of June, the University of Maryland College Park announced layoffs for a number of positions, altogether well over 80, but 73 were represented by AFSCME. We're talking about AFSCME Maryland here, and the specific union is Local 1072. We have three individuals joining us on the podcast today. We have two Sarahs and one Todd. Sarah Eppley is a union steward. Sarah Grun is representing one of the folks that were laid off, and then there's Todd Holden. Todd, I'm going to start with you. Todd is president of 1072. Why don't you paint a picture of what happened here, and also, obviously, do a little shout out here on 1072, how many people you represent. Well over, what is it, 4,000 or something at the University of Maryland?
Yeah, that's right, Flash. We represent over 4,200 workers at the University of Maryland College Park. A lot of them have had a pretty awful spring, if you ask me. Maryland has been facing budget constraints for a while now. A loss of federal funding, loss of research funding, that obviously has created pressure. The university said there was a crisis and that they had to cut costs. And while we definitely question whether or not it's a true crisis, they decided that the best action forward was to lay off 72 of our members.
But they had money for some staff at the university, from what I'm reading. It's just the union brothers and sisters affected here. What do we know about that?
Of the over 80 layoffs, over 80% of those workers were union represented workers. Certainly, they didn't entertain cutting the salaries of coaches who make $6 million a year to have a losing record. They certainly didn't entertain cutting the salaries of leadership. Darryl Pines, the president of the University of Maryland College Park, still makes over $1 million a year. As far as we know, he's not taking a pay cut in order to help get through this crisis.
Okay, so they're having some fiscal issues here, but it only seems to be union members being involved here. And yeah, the money in sports is amazing at universities today. All right, one of those that was laid off is being represented by Sarah Grun. Sarah, talk to me about what's going on in your life right now. I'm sure you weren't counting on this. You got a little extracurricular activity here dealing with this one member. You'll probably get more depending on how successful you are. Talk to me about it.
Well, it was really shocking. June 3rd, I got a message from my supervisor that morning asking me to come to her office. I got there a little early, was chatting with my coworkers, and then she pulled me in and read directly from a script. There was no eye contact. I was crying, as probably a bunch of folks were, and there was just no emotion. And it was a really big slap in the face for me because my role at the College of Information was manager of strategic initiatives and special projects, but I focused on all of our large-scale event planning. So I had just come off of 3 major events in a month, from our representation at Maryland Day, which is the largest event that the university hosts. I was in charge of 8 mini events at that. 2 days after that, I hosted our annual awards reception with our distinguished alumna, and then commencement. And so all of those functions are things that will need to continue. But with the elimination of my position, that job is gone. So it's just a really big, slap in the face. And mine is only one story out of the 80 plus. So it's been really hard. I bought my house 5 minutes off campus. I thought I was going to be a Terp lifer. It's just soul crushing is really the only way to describe the last month and a half.
I remember the day that I was shown my walking papers when I worked at a talk radio station. This was decades ago. You never forget that day. It's devastating. It truly is devastating because it just really plays on your psyche. And you wonder, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Where am I going to go from here in your situation? You got a house you're dealing with. That's got to be horrific. Let's go to Sarah Eppley. Now, Sarah is a union steward with the local. Maybe you could speak to what kind of jobs are going to be affected here. I'm reading like mental health services. Sarah talked about planning commencement, IT services. Can you give us a little more description of the jobs that are at stake here that are gone as we speak? Hopefully we'll get them back. I don't know. That's where the union comes in. But what do we know right now about the folks?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of office workers across campus. There were entire departments that seemed to have been closed, but in some cases, it was just one or two people in a department, and it really feels like the people in a lot of cases were targeted. We're actually grieving 40 of the layoffs out of all the people that were laid off because there were a lot of like weird red flags of like this person had just recently won a grievance or was still pursuing a grievance, or they were involved in the union and maybe being targeted for union activity. There were folks who had an ADA accommodation or had just come off of FML or parental leave. We actually had one individual who had just given birth to twins and was still out on parental leave with one sick twin still in the hospital and was laid off, and her whole entire department was notified before she was even that she had been laid off. We heard a story from one individual who had to carry all of their belongings from their office out in a black trash bag. Like just the amount of disrespect that all of these workers faced, and just the way that the entire layoff process was handled, and the fact that the university didn't even consider any other measures to balance their budget before laying off all of these employees who are hardworking. And as Sarah Grun alluded to, like a lot of that work isn't going away. So now it's just being left to their old office mates to take over. And a lot of these departments are already overburdened. So
Yeah.
it's really disrespectful of the entire, staff of UMD who work hard. And it makes people question, like, am I going to be next? Like, do I have any job security here? This is supposed to be a state job with benefits. There should be more job security. There should be a certain level of respect that employees just aren't getting. I think this was a big shock to a lot of people.
Well, what we're seeing here, especially when somebody is involved in the union, I mean, this is tantamount to union busting. And Todd, I have to ask you, I mean, do they have a history of doing this, to your knowledge?
Yes. It took a long time for higher ed to win labor rights in Maryland in the first place. And the last 30 years has really been, I think, a lot of uphill fighting just to get rights that one would presume a strongly democratic and liberal state would have. However, Maryland's labor laws traditionally lag behind other states, for one thing. It wasn't until just a few years ago that even union represented salaried workers could not be let go with cause. The university still relied on showing people the door for no good reason, even after unions became a thing. So this is just, in our mind, another feature of that. We also think that the university likes to practice union avoidance. And rather than coming to the union first to discuss their budget pressures and ways in which they could work collaboratively with the union in problem solving, they laid off all of these workers 1 week before we were scheduled to have a meeting with the president of the university, Darrell Pines, to discuss just that. The fact that they chose to act first and then talk to the union later and then try to fight the layoffs and people's right to grieve the layoffs really just underscores that pattern and their general attitude towards labor in general.
So we have a problem. The question now is, what are we going to do about the problem? Now, we've got people that are laid off in very key positions, a lot of support staff here. We have a fall session is going to be here before you know it. There's got to be some concern about that being ramped up for that. So who wants to take the answer to this one? What's the first? I would imagine, is some of this in court right now or what?
Well, right now there is a big fight over a worker's right to grieve their layoff in the first place. Because as Sarah said, we filed 40 grievances representing layoff workers where the union has been able to uncover enough concern, enough procedural defect, enough violations of the law, policy, or our contract that worker really does deserve a fair hearing where we can work through the particulars of those issues. The university is claiming that what they did was essentially equivalent to a firing, and that those workers should not even have that step one hearing to begin with. We believe that at all costs, they're going to avoid actually having a full and fair hearing of the particulars of the layoff, and rather cynically hoping to wait out people, to wait out the union, to wait out people, make them lose hope, and hope that they can all sort of sweep this under the rug and make it go away. AFSCME is very intent on making sure that that doesn't happen at all. And we'll tell anyone who listens, including you, Flash, that the university likes to portray itself as being something that is helping the world and is out front and progressive in doing that. But they are going to resort to these sort of petty tactics.
What they say and what they do are two different things. I think we know that story. We should drive people to the website, too. It's AFSCME MD, like Maryland, AFSCMEMD.org. We're talking about local 1072 here. We're looking at over 70 people laid off recently because of so-called budget cuts, but they did find money for, the president, the coaches. I mean, the people that are making a lot of money, they're okay. They're okay. And we have a fight on our hands. So, Sarah Eppley, let's go back to you because it's important, number one, to do a show like this to get the word out so you can get community support. Where are you when it comes to community support right now? And I'm talking part of that community, the lawmakers here, because they help fund these, colleges. And we've seen this across the board. You're not the only one. I know there's other universities dealing with the same thing. But how are we looking? What kind of support do we have right now?
Yeah, just to speak first to the other universities that are dealing with this, at the same time that people were mass laid off from University of Maryland, Bowie State University also experienced a number of layoffs from their bargaining unit as well. So right now, AFSCME has put together a toolkit and a letter template that you can sign on to. I believe it goes to the University System of Maryland just to express support. Anyone in the community can sign on to these letters. So we've been doing outreach, on campus and elsewhere, trying to get people to sign on and show that we're really not pleased with how these layoffs were handled and that the University System of Maryland should, first of all, use the money that's in the budget. One thing that we didn't point out yet is that almost immediately after the layoffs happened, the university lifted their hiring freeze. So obviously there's money in the budget to hire and keep on some employees. So they really have the budget. They're lying about not having the budget. And, they should not have resorted to layoffs first without considering other options if they really need to balance their budget.
If you don't mind me saying that, that is a completely stupid move on their behalf. I mean, come on. They lay off these folks. They say we need to save money, and then they lift the hiring freeze? You got to be kidding me. My
It's so
God.
blatant. And the fact that they think they can get away with it, we have to hold them to account.
It's also important to point out that the university still has a huge endowment of almost $1 billion. It also has an unrestricted fund balance of hundreds of millions of dollars that the university system makes College Park keep in reserve. And there are no plans to use any of that fund balance to try to bridge this gap either. It really is about their priorities and what they want, and not about the people that help make the university happen.
Yeah. The money's there. It's a question of priorities. Let's be honest about this whole thing. Let's go to Sarah Grun, and I think we'll leave with Sarah here. And I thank you all for joining us here on the podcast. Sarah, how are you holding up here? This is you indicated this is really tough. You didn't see this coming. I mean, and you got a lot going on in your life right now, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. But just between us here, how do you feel? I mean, this is tough, but talk to me about that. I'd like to hear your perspective, moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really hard. Like, there's no other way to say it. I was coming off of that high of having just really successful things happening and putting my entire heart and soul into what I was doing, only to have the rug pulled out from under me. And, I was one of those people who had recently taken FML for a major surgery. And so I'm still recovering from that. I'm still going through testing. My primary care, women's health, pharmacy was all at the University Health Center. I lost referrals. I lost access to all of that, along with my email. So it wasn't just my job. It was so much more than that. And, again, it's just, it was so inhumane. And just, I know I'm only one person out of the group, but I hope that we are able to make something happen here, because it's been really hard.
Well, you have our full support here on the show, America's Workforce. We are the #1 union podcast for a good reason. For people like you going through the crap that you're going through, that you shouldn't have to be going through. The money is there. All right, our featured guest today, you just heard Sarah Grun. There's Sarah Eppley, who's a union steward and the president of Local 1072, Todd Holden. And the website is AFSCMEMD.org. You have a voice here. Keep us posted. Anything we can do, okay?
Thanks, Flash.
Thank you.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up on Monday, we kick off Labor 132 with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.